please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic?
Captain's log, supplemental. Some of our inmates think that they can bribe the wardens that keep them safe. When this happens, we like to punish the inmate by requisitioning all of their money in singles and then keister snatching it in their ass. We then do a random search of their ISO cube, and because they've got singles in their ass, they get into even more trouble. Hello everyone, welcome to the Halls of Injustice. Today we welcome inmates number something I can't remember, 18 blah blah 3, 183 I remembered, to the ISO cubes. His name is Bernie Ecclestone. Bernie Ecclestone is a very old man who has committed obvious crimes over his many years of life, but only recently has he been snagged, nabbed and charged, sentenced for it. Although one could argue, based on what we will learn, this does come with a form of preferential treatment to an extent. So what I'm going to do is tell you a bit about Bernie Ecclestone, and I say a bit. I can't go through everything. The man is 92 and it would take far too long to tell you everything you need to know, so I will try and reduce it down to the more important parts. The crime he has committed, instead of focusing on allegations of other crimes, and the sentence of Bernie Ecclestone. This one's tricky because I'm sure many will say, oh, but you left this out, oh, but you left all of this out. Yes, because I'm only going to focus on the part where he was found guilty. Okay, and his history is fascinating, truly fascinating, because he's been in the public eye for so long, and he is a very old cantankerous git, but he was that 50 years ago, he's still it now. It makes for rather amusing commentary. He's also the tallest hobbit in all the Shire. So I'm going to tell you now a bit about Bernie Ecclestone, aka inmates number 183, before we move on to the obvious crime and sentence. Bernie Ecclestone was born in 1930 in Suffolk. So if you think about Suffolk in the United Kingdom, technically he was born in 1905. If you got the joke, congratulations. When World War II began, his family lived in southeast London, Bexley Heath. They did not evacuate. He had, Bernie Ecclestone, actually taken up Grand Prix racing briefly. He had 2 races. He didn't qualify for either. First entry was the Monaco Grand Prix in 58, and his last, the British Grand Prix, also in 1958. As far as his career goes, he started business trading in spare parts for motorcycles and then formed the Compton and Ecclestone motorcycle dealership with Fred Compton. He retired from racing following a number of accidents at Brands Hatch, and so he focused on business interests. These business interests would include property and owning a racing team. Before he had attempted to try and be a racing driver in the Formula 1 World Championship, he actually managed Stuart Lewis Evans and purchased 2 chassis from the disbanded Connaught Formula 1 team. A friendship with Roy Salvadori led to him becoming a manager of the driver Jochen Rindt and a partial owner of the 1970 Lotus Formula 2 team. The other driver of that team was Graham Hill, father of Damon Hill. While he was investing in Formula 1 teams, he was also investing as a car dealer in Mercedes. This is a lot of where his money came from. When he bought a Formula 1 team off of someone else, the team was called the Brabham team, he focused after realising he wasn't doing as well on the Formula 1 side. Instead, he abandoned the highly successful custom car production business established by the original owner. He believed that by focusing his attention on the team, he would be more successful. He eventually sold the team in 1988 for $5 million, after paying initially $120,000 for it. In 1974, with Frank Williams, Colin Chapman, Teddy Mayer, Ken Tyrrell and Max Mosley, he formed the Formula 1 Constructors Association. This started him off on the path to essentially ruling Formula 1, a position he held on to as the chief essentially until 2017, following the business Formula 1 Group's takeover by Liberty Media in 2016. Before that had happened, there were a number of controversies. The US Grand Prix was a great example. The loss of Silverstone as a venue for the British Grand Prix in 2008. Rather amusingly, in 1999 he had a triple coronary bypass, He reduced, when this had happened, his share in SLEC Holdings, which is the owner of various F1 managing firms, to 25%. Despite that, though, he managed to retain complete control of the companies and take phenomenal ownership of the revenue generating. He has also put in offers to buy Saab Automobile Company. He also had bought Queen's Park Rangers in 2007 with one of the most corrupt directors of a respective Formula 1 team in the form of Flavio Briatore. In 2010, he actually ended up buying the majority of the shares from Flavio Briatore, owning 62% of the company, but in 2011 sold their shareholding to Tony Fernandez. Rather amusingly, people believed that Ecclestone had been involved in the Great Train Robbery of 1963. Yeah, not a joke. In 1997, when the Labour Party, then in charge, had pledged to ban tobacco advertising in its manifesto, Bernie had gone over Tessa Jowell's head straight to Tony Blair with Max Mosley because, at that time, cigarette companies, tobacco companies, were very heavily promoted in Formula 1. They were also very big donors to the Labour Party. It was later discovered when Blair left office that when he had originally said that Formula 1 was exempt from tobacco sponsorships, and it was taken 2 weeks later, actually the decision was made at the time of the meeting. Optics, everyone. Amusing stuff. Over the years, he has been accused of tax avoidance to the tune of £1.2 billion through legal tax avoidance schemes. HMRC, HM Revenue and Customs tax people, agreed to conclude the matter in 2008 with a payment of £10 million. I see we're really trying to hit Bernie hard with this, although it was legal at that point. I'm going to avoid the obvious remarks about Hitler because he said some things about that, and Max Mosley, not going to get involved. He's been accused of bribery a number of times, and much of that comes from Germany, and he has looked down a bit on Lewis Hamilton because of the events surrounding George Floyd and the take a knee gesture. Now this is more than enough because I want to focus on what he was charged with, and that is tax fraud in July of 2022, which takes us to present. So let us now discuss the one crime that we want to talk about today of inmates number 183, aka Bernie Ecclestone. The case concerning Bernie Ecclestone actually covers a period of 18 years. This would include interests, civil penalties. A meeting had taken place between Bernie Ecclestone and HMRC officers in July of 2015. At that time, he declared to those officers that he only had one trust, which was established on behalf of his daughters. He also told HMRC that he was not the settler nor beneficiary of any trust in or outside of the United Kingdom. HMRC didn't believe him though, because why would they? So they started to investigate. Bernie Ecclestone's name doesn't carry as much weight when it comes to telling the truth. Understandably so, he's been accused of bribery and tax avoidance by many different places for years. And again, the 1.2 billion thing, yeah, nah. HMRC though, over a period of time, managed to find that this was a complex and worldwide attempt by Bernie Ecclestone to deceive. So his answer was inaccurate. What didn't help Bernie Ecclestone was, for somebody that was in absolute control of so much for so long, he didn't seem to know how ownership of the accounts in question was structured. The accounts in question were in places like Singapore, an account, a trust even, that held more than £400 million. On the 11th of July 2022, 2 weeks after an interview on Good Morning Britain, Bernie Ecclestone was charged with fraud by false representation by the Crown Prosecution Service. The trial for this got pushed back on a number of occasions. For example, a first hearing was scheduled for the 22nd of August 2022. The trial date was January 2023 and then pushed back to November 2023. Bernie Ecclestone had pled not guilty to the charge of fraud by false representation. What didn't help Bernie in this was that, for someone like Bernie, he was spending a lot of money on legal advice. He's a billionaire, but he knows he's dragging this out, and as he's getting older, he's in his 90s. This is not helping him in the slightest. HMRC had a pretty compelling case that he owed them hundreds of millions in tax. There is an argument that some of the earlier accusations of tax avoidance concerning £1.2 billion can't be included and shouldn't be included because he used at that time legal tax avoidance schemes. Many loopholes have since been shut. We'll just ignore the fact that the Conservative Party are currently seeking to create tax breaks for the highest earners in this country, which will fix so much. and make them totally appealing to the oikory, because it's a distraction from Bernie, okay? On Thursday the 12th of October, a month before he was meant to stand trial, Bernie Ecclestone appeared in court, Southwark Crown Court, where he, upon being asked to confirm his name, stood up and declared he was guilty when asked. The reason for this is because he had agreed a deal with HMRC so that he would plead guilty and, of course, be punished for it, but he'd agree to draw a line in the sand for this. His lawyer had said that Bernie bitterly regrets the events that led to this criminal trial. Prosecutor Richard Wright had said that Bernie had knowingly given an untrue or misleading answer to HMRC, and as of the 7th of July 2015, Bernie did not know the truth of the position, so was not able to give an answer to the question. Bernie Ecclestone was not entirely clear on how ownership of the accounts in question was structured. He therefore did not know whether it was liable for tax, interest or penalties in relation to amounts passing through the accounts. Mr. Ecclestone recognises it was wrong to answer the questions he did because it ran the risk that HMRC would not continue to investigate his affairs. He now accepts that some tax is due in relation to these matters. So with this, we're now going to go straight to the sentence. It's not going to be a very long sentence. It's quite simple actually. In a civil settlement agreement, he will repay almost £653 million to HMRC, all of which will pay for the caviar they eat. It won't actually go anywhere of use. But also, he was sentenced to 17 months in jail, suspended for 2 years. Now, the reason for that is because he's 92 years old, and it was argued by his defense team that he is frail, his health is failing, he has a number of medical issues, and he is a low risk to the public, which is true. Fraud does carry a sentence, and this is quite an extensive one, and the financial hit is substantial, but there is still preferential treatment here regardless. I know this isn't the longest Halls of Injustice, and I could have made it a lot longer, because Bernie, there's a lot to him, but in truth, there's no real point, because the end of it is a lot simpler. So what I'm going to do now is tell you about Common Law UK Fraud Act 2006. Fraud by false representation, or false accounting, conspiracy to defraud, could carry anywhere between 6 and 8 years in custody, or 7 and 10 for the more maximums. Bernie got nowhere near that. And obviously someone that adheres to the law, considering the nature of this and how long it went on for, you can consider it, regardless of the mitigating factors, a very soft sentence in the prison side. The financial side's quite substantial. In fact, it's more than what was held in the trust in question. But the argument that reduces the sentence is a lesser culpability because of a lack of knowledge. So limited awareness or understanding of the extent of fraudulent activity. Whether that's true or not concerning Bernie, who knows at this point? The guy is a fossil, but he's a very smart fossil.